Hey everybody, welcome, good afternoon, welcome to FileMaker session 2.6, FileMaker for stage lighting. If this is your first time joining us today, I recommend you stop right now and you go back and you watch all the previous videos, because today's video, as the others, will be a direct continuation of the solution that we've been building so far in these sessions. So today's session is all about how to get your FileMaker solution talking to EOS, kind of in a basic way today. The main focus is going to be being able to turn channels on and off, both from your channel worksheet, Focus Assistant, and from your work notes. So super useful if you're looking at your work notes on your screen and you want to turn a light on, let's say to check a focus note or something like that. This is some of the topics I do cover in this video today are also covered in a kind of a standalone video I did about a year ago that you can find actually on this very same playlist. The difference in this video is going to be that I take some of the things that I talked about in that first video and we directly implement them into our own solutions, whereas before it was just kind of showing you how to do it as a standalone. So let's dive right in. You want to make sure that you have downloaded the Monkey Bread software plugins. So to find those, you can either Google MBS FileMaker or Monkey Bread software FileMaker, or you can go here to my website under today's session, FileMaker 2.6, and you can find a link to that. Once you've gotten to their website, you're going to download either the Mac or the Windows version of the plugin, whatever applies to you. Of course, I'm using a Mac, so I have those already pre-downloaded. And then once you have them downloaded, on the Mac version, it's going to show up as a disk image. So I'm just going to open up that disk image. And you can see there's all kinds of stuff in here. So what we want to do first, of course, is actually install these plugins into our FileMaker solution. So within this disk image, and I'm not 100% sure what it shows up as on Windows, maybe it's a zip file, but hopefully you get just about the same amount of things here. You see there's two folders that we want to look at first. There's one that says plugin for Mac and one that says plugin for Windows. Which, yeah, they look like just about the same either way. So for me, I'm going to double click on that plugin for Mac folder, and you're going to see that there's a README file and there's also mbs.fm plugin. So just having that open is all I need to do. I don't need to double click on it or anything like that yet. I'm going to come back over here to my FileMaker installation, go to FileMaker Preferences, and then here under your plugins option pane, you'll find a list of anything you have currently enabled. If you haven't already installed these, this is going to be blank. You won't have the MBS plugin there. So the easiest way to install this is to then click on this Reveal Plugin Folder button, and it's going to open a Finder window for you with wherever that plugin is currently wherever it wants you to install those plugins. And all I have to do now is drag the plugin from the disk image over here into that folder and restart FileMaker, and I'll be all set to go. So again, I've opened up the plugin for Mac folder within the disk image. I see this. I have clicked on Reveal Plugin Folder inside of FileMaker, and then yours probably is empty. I'm just dragging that right over into the plugin folder. Of course, if I did it, it would ask me to replace it, but I already have it, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, so once you have that mbs.fm plugin file inside of your extensions folder, you're going to want to restart FileMaker. Even if it does show up, just restart FileMaker. So I'll give you a second to do that before we move on. Restarting and just make sure that it's able to load all of the different functions and stuff like that the plugin needs to function. Okay, so before we actually dive into our own solutions, in fact, I'm going to minimize that for a second. I want to show you a couple of the other things that come included with this plugin download. Biggest thing here is going to be this examples folder. So if I open this examples folder, you can see there are all kinds of different things that you can do with this plugin. And if you look at the website, there is really strong documentation on every single one of these functions. So there's all kinds of things that you can do, all kinds of things that just kind of expand what FileMaker is natively able to do. And Christian, the developer of these plugins, has a separate database just containing the, whatever that particular function is. So it's really easy to look at it, kind of piece it apart, figure out how it works, and then implement it into your own solution, which is what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to be looking to start off with, we're going to be looking at the UDP sender function. And you can find that in your examples folder under Network, UDP, and then UDP sender. Now what you're going to want to do is you can't actually edit anything about this file if you open it up from the disk image. So I'm going to drag this just onto my desktop or into my FileMaker folder, wherever, make a local copy of it somewhere. And of course I already have it. So I just have that UDP sender.fmp12 on my actual computer and outside of the disk image so that I can actually change things about it. And as you start to go through these things more and more, you'll find that there's all kinds of other functions in here that are super, super useful. Recently, I have added all kinds of camera functions and stuff like that I hope to do on a future session that are, well beyond the simple iPhone photos that we did before, whereas it's actually using your webcams and stuff like that. So all kinds of really cool stuff you can do in there. Okay, so let's open up that UDP sender.fmp12 file that we have dragged over to our computer. So we can see right away that there are 4 fields here on this layout. There's a target IP, there's a port, a message, and then a result. The first 3 are pretty self-explanatory. The target IP is going to be where we're sending the message to. The port is what port we're sending the message on. The message is the message itself. And then result is basically MBS will figure out how many bytes were sent of whatever message that we were sending, and it'll give us that result here. Or if MBS has some kind of an error, it will fill in that field with that error. And if we start picking apart this database a little bit, if I go to my database manager, you can see that it's a single table with just those fields on it. Of course, no relationships because it's just the one table. Very, very simple. And then if we open up our script editor, you'll see that there's only a single script in there, and it's just a send script. So it's basically, if you kind of go through this, it's taking those various fields and taking whatever information is in them, and then it's using an MBS function called socket send message to actually send that message out to whatever receiver we want. So in our case, that's going to be EOS, but you could also do a similar thing to send really to anything that will accept strings. You'll have to format it for whatever that particular program is, but if your program accepts strings, then you'll be able to use this to send it information. So let's go ahead and we're just going to play around to start off with this default file so you can get a sense of how it works. So I've got EOS open over here already. I'm going to pull that back over to my main workspace. I'm using EOS 2.9, so the most recent stable release. There aren't any major changes with this in 3.0. There will be some changes coming in some of the OSC formatting, which is one of the reasons why I'm not talking about OSC today. My solution uses a combination of these old-fashioned strings and OSC, but there are some changes coming to the OSC implementation that are going to make it a little bit more uniform, and I hope to be able to do everything via OSC in the next year or so. So there will be another video one day when that happens, but again, today we're just keeping it simple. So I'm going to create a new show here just to make sure I don't have anything lingering in my Nomad setup. And then I'm going to go to Setup, System Settings, Show Control, and then down here under String UDP, I'm going to make sure that receiving is enabled. These other ones, everything else doesn't really matter for today. So we're just making sure that receiving is enabled, and then we're going to specify a port. So I'm going to use 3033 as my port. Of course, to do that, I just clicked on the box, typed in 3033, enter, and now we're pretty much good to go. Nomad is listening on that port for string messages. Of course, you do need to make sure within the shell that you have, within the shell that you do have strings enabled. So that would be here under settings. Typically, I believe they are enabled by default. So unless you've gone in and changed that, you should be good to go. But if for some reason what we're doing today doesn't work, go back to your shell, click on settings, and then you'll see where to enable. Of course, I just accidentally closed it, so I guess I could show you right now. We'll go to settings, network, and then down here, where is it? UDP strings and OSC, just making sure that that is checked. If it's not checked, it will not work. Great, happy accident there. Okay, so as we wait for this to open back up, here we go. Let me go ahead and do that new show thing again because I didn't actually save what I was working on. We're going to reset all of our windows here. And again, show control, UDP enabled, port 30, 33. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to live, and I'm going to open up what's one of the most important window in any kind of EOS development, and that is going to be tab 99. So I'm holding down the tab button, typing in 99 and releasing, and this is my diagnostics window. So anything I do on the console, anything I type is going to show up here in this, this log. You can choose to log your UDP coming in, you can choose to log incoming and outgoing OSC. Pretty much anything that happens in your console gets logged here. So it's really easy for us to help troubleshoot and figure out where something is going wrong. So I'm going to click on clear to clear out the log, and then network info, which is going to give me my console's IP address. Of course, in this particular case, I'm on the same computer. So I found that on Mac, you can't use localhost like this, 127. You do have to put the actual IP address in there. Maybe that's different on Windows. You can try either way. 10.101.1.170 is my iMac address. And then, of course, our port we specified was 3033. Now the message, this is where we have to be aware of syntax. So an EOS string message is formatted as follows. You have an open caret here, and then your user number. So I happen to be over here on EOS user 3, so I'm going to specify user 3. Close that caret. The start of a command line is denoted by a $sign. So user 3 $sign. And then it's pretty much self-explanatory syntax from there. I can say chan1 full, and then to terminate that line, I'm going to use a £sign or a hashtag. And now when I click send message, look at what just happened over here. You see on my command line, channel 1 at full has happened. It shows up here in my diagnostics log. And if I come over to my live summary, you can see that 1 is now at full. I could also go 1 through 10 full, and there we go, 1 through 10 are at full. The cool thing you can do with this, let me make this a little bit, let me resize this so we can see everything. There we go. The other cool thing you can do about this is you can specify whatever user you want. So let's say, let's say your programmer is user 3 and your ALD or somebody who needs to make some changes is user 2. I could send, let's say 1 through 5, and let's turn them off, maybe say out. And watch, see that happened here in my live display, but it didn't actually post to the command line because the command line of this particular user is user 3. If we come back to diagnostics, where'd it go? Here it is. You can see user 2, channel 1 through 5 at out. So it did take that. And if I switch this over to user 2, you see that that's still sitting on my command line because I never cleared the command line. So yeah, so you can be as, you can only use, if you're only using one user, you could specify it as that user every time. In my solution, I like to have a default user. I put it like user 90 or something like that. So anything that my solution is doing kind of happens in the background and doesn't interfere with anybody's command line. But let's say that like Abby, one of my associates, for example, is going to work on follow spot stuff, and she needs to send follow spot information directly from FileMaker over to her Nomad machine. She's able to change the user number within FileMaker to be able to say, okay, I want to see everything that's happening and I want it to happen on my workstation, on my user. So that's definitely possible as well. Okay, so yeah, so that's basically how this function works. And this is, again, just using the default example file that MBS has made available for us. And this is a good way to start experimenting a little bit and see what else is possible. So for instance, if I wanted to clear the command line for user 2, clear _ command, send. Of course, I'm on user 3, but if I go to user 2, it's gone now. And I could do the same thing for user 3. I could say user 3, clear command, boop, there it goes. And you see it received clear command, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, I could just then say sneak enter. And now everything is gone. I've got no channels on. Great. So let's go ahead and take this default example file and let's build that into our solution. So for right now, I'm going to move EOS out of the way. Actually, I'm just going to put it over here on another space. I'm going to open up the file where we left off last week. And now I need to do a little bit of planning and thinking about, okay, what do I need to do in order to get this information over into this file? And the first thing we need to do is we need to create a new table in our database. Here, of course, the table is called UDP sender. Within our solution, I'm going to call that just EOS. So here under my tables, of course, I have a whole bunch of them already. I'm going to make this one just EOS. So I'm creating a new table. I'm going to get rid of these default fields. For the most part, this table will only ever have one record in it because we're only really talking to one console. You can't send the strings to a client on the network. You always send your stuff to the master, to the main console on the network. So we really are only ever going to have one record here. And then if we look here kind of back and forth, let's move this over so we can see what are the fields we need. We need an IP, we need a port, we need a message, and then we need a result. And I'm going to add one more field, and that's going to be user number. I'm just going to call it user. So that way we can actually specify what user we want it to be on. And then, of course, the port is always going to be a number, so I'm going to change that. Everything else I'm just going to kind of leave as is. Great. So I've got IP, message, port, result, and user. Those 5 fields are the ones that I'm going to start out with. I'm going to click OK. And then, of course, as we've learned, FileMaker has created a nice little layout for us in the background with those fields on it. Of course, there's no records yet, so I'm going to hit new record. And then I'm just going to put the same information in. I'm going to say IP is 10.101.1.170. I'm going to leave the message blank for now. Port was 3033. Result, I'm going to leave blank. And then user, for right now, I'm going to leave user blank. We're going to get to that in a little while. We're going to kind of work our way up to it. Okay, so we have that there. Next thing we're going to want in here is a nice little button to actually do the sending. So we'll say this button is send. And right now it doesn't actually do anything because we don't have our script in yet. So I'm going to open up my scripts editor, and I'm going to make a new little folder down here that is going to be EOS integration. And then let's see here. I want a new script, and this script is going to I'm going to call it MBS send UDP. MBS send UDP. And of course, I could import these. You know, we did some importing of scripts before, but because it's just a simple script, I'm just going to copy paste all of these steps. I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste. Copy. And I'm going to paste those over here. And of course, what we'll notice right away is we have 4 errors to fix because we have different names for our fields. So I'm just going to kind of work my way down the script, and I'm going to update these things. So right here, this originally was UDP sender result. So this guy right here is going to become EOS result. This one right here is the same thing. This is going to become EOS result. And this one's going to become EOS result. And the other thing to keep in mind here is you see that there's a discrepancy between what this variable, the variable content is here. The easiest way to fix that is to just come in here and actually copy paste this text. So I'm opening up in my demo file, I'm copying the value of that variable. And then I'm going to paste it over here. And you see it's just added a bunch of escape characters and other stuff. So rather than going through and trying to make sure that I got everything, or trying to pull everything out, I'm just going to paste it like that. And then, of course, you'll notice that we need to change these 3 fields because these are also from our old file. So I want to have my IP address here. So I'm just going to highlight that, double-click IP, port, and message. Just like that. So again, all I'm really doing is I'm retargeting there's one here, a couple here, one here, and one here. I'm retargeting the demo fields because they have a different nomenclature to them. I'm retargeting them with the names of the fields that I created within my solution. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and close the demo file because I don't need it anymore. I've got everything I need kind of pulled over already. And I don't want to get confused as to which file that I'm actually working in. So I'm going to close that demo file completely. And let's see here. Now what do I need to do? I need to link this send button over to this send UDP script. So I'm going to double click on the send button and I'm going to say perform script. I haven't saved it yet. I guess I should save it first, right? Now I'm going to link this over to the script. There it is, send UDP. Okay, so now if I go back into browse mode and let's go ahead and pull EOS back over here into our view. Sorry, I know I'm zooming around a lot. I shouldn't do that. I will try to be better at that. Okay, so I'm going to clear my stuff here. I'm just going to go ahead and give this a shot again. I'm going to say user 3, channel 1 through 10, full, enter. And send. Hey, it worked. Look at that. Great. So now I've got this manual button. That's great. I still have to type in manual command lines, though. That's kind of not great. And I've got, like, you know, this extra information that I don't necessarily always need to see. So the next step is going to be to take this, now that we have the functionality built into our solution, it's going to be to take this and figure out ways to pass along different parts of this message using variables based on what layout we're on. So for example, when I'm on my channel layout, I want to be able to pass in a number. If I was just doing one number here, I want this number 1 to change to whatever particular channel that I'm working on my layout at that time, be it in the work notes or be it in the focus assistant. I also might want to specify what user I'm working in at any time. Really, every single part of this string, this message string, you could customize, you could make happen with variables. And so that's what we're going to do next. In order to do that, though, what I need to do is to split out parts of this script a little bit. Because if we look at what this script is doing, you see that there are really 3 distinct parts to it. I'm going to split them up here. There's the first part here that checks to see if a socket has already been created. So a socket is what basically MBS creates a socket in order to communicate between FileMaker and whatever your receiving device is. So it's going to check to see if it already created a socket, and if it didn't, it'll create a new one. And then it will actually send your message. And then the third part is filling out that result thing. It's either going to tell you I didn't send anything, or it's going to say I sent this many bytes. So really, it's up to you how much detail you want there. I don't really use this result at all because it's pretty obvious to know if something's sent or not. So I usually just kind of get rid of this. But really the two most important things about this script are this first part that creates a socket and then the second part that actually sends the message. And you notice the way that MBS is configured is by setting this variable of R to an MBS function of some kind. So as we start going through this more and more, like you notice here, you know, it's creating the socket, it's making the value this MBS function. Same thing here. So R is kind of what MBS uses in order to execute its functions. So that was a little confusing, but it'll hopefully make a little bit more sense in a second. Okay, so what I want to do next is I'm going to start splitting this out a little bit. So to do that, I'm going to create a new script, and I'm going to call this one create socket, not socky, socket. Great. And what I'm going to do then, I'm going to leave this initial one completely intact, but I'm just going to pull out parts of it. So I'm going to pull out this entire beginning section right here. I'm going to copy that, put that here. So now I've just split it up. I've got create socket, pretty much good to go, all I need. And then I'm going to create a second script that'll actually be a send message. And of course, that send message will be just this part right here, this variable, this R variable. Great, so now I've split it up pretty well. And over here on my layout, what I might do is now, instead of having a send button, I might have a connect to EOS button, or create socket, I guess is a better description. So I'm going to create a socket, and then of course that is going to do that script. And then I could also still have a manual send button if I want to. Like that. So now if I didn't already have a socket created, this is going to create that new socket, and then this will send the message over. Wonderful. Okay, so that makes sense, but we still need to be able to pass dynamic information along into this send message script. So instead of it just being, just this simple send message, I want to start customizing that a little bit. So I'm actually going to create a new folder, and we're going to start out with this just being channels. So within my EOS integration, I'm going to have a channels folder, and I'm going to copy paste that send message script into this channel, and I'm going to call it turn channel on. That'll be the name of this script, and that's pretty self-explanatory as to what it's going to do, I hope. So now what do we need to do? We need to now change this message to be dynamic. So I'm going to say set variable, and we're going to make that a local variable message, and I'm going to leave it blank for now. And then here within this, I am just going to change this part right here. So instead of targeting the EOS message field, instead I'm going to target my local variable of message. So I still am getting the IP address from the EOS table. I'm still getting the port from the EOS table, but I'm getting the message here through this local script variable. And of course, this last thing is the encoding, which really we never really need to change. Okay, so now I can go in and I can start defining what that message needs to be, and whatever I set as this script variable, this local variable, is then going to be passed along to my UDP sender. So let's think about what we want to do here. Let's go over to our channels layout to start, our Focus Assistant layout to start, and now I'm going to start kind of defining this out. So my message is going to be what? It's going to be U3 space $ chan, we'll just say 297 for now, full $. So I think it's useful to start out by typing the whole thing like this. And then we say, okay, what about this is dynamic? It's going to be this channel number. So I'm going to replace this channel number with a field, and that field is going to be channel. So if we look at this now, I've got a text string here that is quotes U3 $channel quote, and then ampersand instruments channel ampersand, and then another string. So basically I've got two strings here that are being separated by this by these ampersands with the instruments channel in the middle. So U3 channel, instruments channel, full pound, or hashtag, whatever you want to call it. Great. So I'll leave that on the screen for another second, just so hopefully it makes sense. Great. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to come over here to my Focus Assistant, and I'm going to add a couple of buttons. Oops, that's not a button, that's a field, Mike. Going to add a button, and that button is going to be turn on. Maybe we give it a fun little, it's not like a light bulb or anything, I don't think. What if we just use this? That looks kind of fun. Now we have a button that says turn on, and of course we want that to perform our script that we just made under channels, turn channel on. Okay, so now we're going to go back here to browse mode. I'm going to open up EOS, and if I turn that light on, okay, so why didn't that work? Let's figure it out. What did I do wrong? Okay, so we're going to use our debugger to figure this out. It worked in my testing, of course. So I am going to, oops, that's not what I want. I'm going to open up a data viewer. This is going to show me what I have, and I'm going to open up my script debugger. And now when I click the turn on button, it's going to ask me to turn on channel. Yes, I'm going to go into that. It's channel 297. Oh, I see, because the why did that work in my... It's because the table is unrelated. Please stand by for 1 second. I'm going to figure out why it worked in my testing last night and not in today's thing. Okay, well, let me show you. I was going to get to this later anyway. But what I want to actually do, because some of this information, like our EOS IP and our EOS port settings, are useful in other parts of the program later on, I'm actually going to make these into global variables so that we have them available to us and we can just pull them right from the global variables. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my EOS setup here for a second. And on this create socket thing, I'm going to add a couple more steps to that script. So in addition to creating a socket, we're going to set a couple of global variables. So I'm going to create a global variable that is EOS IP. Of course, globals are denoted by $2 signs, and the value is going to be whatever was in that IP field. And I'm going to create another one that is EOS UDP port. And this will be port here. And we'll do the same thing for user. So we're going to set, that's probably why it worked, because I worked ahead last night. Okay, EOS user. Okay, so now when I create that, let's open up our data viewer for a second. You can see that those global variables don't exist yet, but now when I click create socket, now that information is available to me to use in scripts and other things throughout the entire layout without having to define a relationship between this table and our other tables. So now what I need to do, of course, within my turn channel on script is I need to redo some of these fields. So instead of EOS IP, we're going to be targeting our global variables, EOS IP, EOS port, EOS UDP port. Great. So now you see socket is already a global variable, EOS IP is a global variable, EOS UDP port is a global variable, and then of course message is a local variable. Great. So now, fingers crossed, when I come back over here to my focus assistant, if I can learn how to use a mouse, that would be helpful. I turn that channel on. Hey, there it goes. Now it worked because it actually was able to pass along that information. So that was the confusion. Last night when I did this, I had already worked ahead and I forgot that I needed to do that before we moved on. So creating those global variables was important. But you can see I can turn lights on. And then of course I can turn lights off the same way. I could sneak them. I don't necessarily want to turn them off. I want to sneak them. So what I'll do is I'm just going to copy paste this turn channel on script, and I'm going to call this channel sneak, and this will be same script, so U3 channel, instruments channel, sneak, and you could even specify a time if you want to. I'm going to say sneak 1, enter, and then of course I can come over here and I can copy paste this button and make this a sneak button. Channel sneak. Great. So let's have EOS open here and have this here. Move our data viewer out of the way. We don't need that anymore. So now I can turn the light on and I can sneak it. And you can see if we do it, here it is. There it is going off in 1 second. So right away, this is kind of a nice little focus assistant tool to have. Both of these scripts are targeting a specific channel, so when I hit sneak, it's only going to sneak that channel. It's not going to mess anything else up. So if you're a 1 or 2 person show, you're going on and you're trying to focus lights and turn stuff on and off. This could be a way that you could have this running on your laptop on stage while you are running your focus, and not have to have necessarily somebody at the console. You could turn lights on or off this way. And using that same syntax, of course, you could get really creative with the different things you could create. You could really create yourself a little EOS keypad if you wanted to. So the next thing we'll look at then is how to take these buttons and implement them over on our work notes table. And the first thing we want to look at on that is I'm gonna open up my database manager for a second, and I'm going to notice that there's a discrepancy between channel, the names of these fields, between channel name here, and then of course on our work notes field, it was called target ID. So the scripts that we've already created here, this turn channel on and off, they use a specific table field within those scripts, which we might not want to do anymore. And also, of course, we got this user number issue here that we have to resolve still. So what I want to do is I want to make these scripts be a little bit more agnostic, so I don't have to create another set. I don't want to have two scripts for turning channels on and off from the Focus Assistant, and two scripts for turning channels on and off from the work notes editor. And the way, of course, we can do that is by passing along a script parameter, which we've used kind of extensively throughout earlier sessions in this course. So before I do that, though, I want to go in and I want to, of course, change this user to be defined by our global. So to do that, I'm going to move the, let's see, how do we want to do this? Let's think about this for a second. Let's go back to our EOS settings. There's a decision we have to make at this point, and that's if in the user box, if you just want to type a simple integer in, or if you want to type in the whole syntax like EOS wants in that string. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so it's just an integer. So if you have somebody who is not super familiar with how this works using your solution, they don't have to know that they have to put that stuff into brackets and have the U. They can just put a number in there. And of course, when we do that, then we're going to need to define that kind of stuff over here in our create socket script. So here within user, rather than just setting the EOS user to the field contents, I got to add a little bit more to it. So I'm going to add open caret U. I'm going to space this out just so you can see what this is. Great. So now I've basically taken that EOS user number and I've inserted it inside of that larger kind of piece of text string that EOS expects. So I've got an open caret, the letter U, and then a closed caret. I'm not doing any spaces or anything like that. We'll define those within our individual script later on. But really all this is doing is it's setting that user number to be in that format that EOS expects it to be. And of course, if we save this, open up our data viewer again. And now when I create socket again, watch what will happen here with the user when we do it. There it is, user U3. Perfect. So everybody is calling me this morning while I'm trying to do this. Okay. So now I've got user 3 in the proper format that I want it to be in. And over here in my turn channel on, I could now substitute this out for that global variable. What is it called? EOS user. And then of course I need to add an ampersand and then a quote. And of course I'm going to leave that space in between this quote and this $sign so that it spaces it out properly. Any spaces that you put out here are not actually passed along. It's just a way for you to kind of view this data a little more easily. But the spaces within your quotes here within this string, those will be passed along as part of that calculation. So I've got my EOS user global variable and then the rest of the stuff. Great, and I'll do the same thing. I'm just gonna copy paste. I'm gonna copy that and put that over here on this one too. Just like that. Great. So now back to what I was trying to do before, and that is trying to make these scripts a little more agnostic so that you don't have to specify instruments channel or work notes target ID within this. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to define at the beginning of my script another variable that is going to be just channel. And then, of course, the value of that will be get script parameter. So we've used that several times. So hopefully you're familiar with what that is by now. So get script parameter, and then instead of instruments channel here, this will be channel. There is not a reason that I started using all caps for the names of the scripts. That's a good catch. I don't know why I did that. There. No particular reason. That was a question that just came in on on chat here. Probably because I've been drafting for the last couple of days, and so I've been doing a lot of caps lock. But it really does not matter either. If you want to use caps, you can. They're not case sensitive when you target these scripts later on. Okay, so channel, use this user channel, and then we'll do the same thing over here. I will copy this, put it into this script, and I will change this right here over to just being channel. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you don't actually have to create this as a separate step within this script. You could put this get script parameter inside of this message calculation. That is perfectly fine. You can make it happen in fewer lines, and hell, you could even do all of this calculation inside of brackets in here. I just think, and if you've been with me for a little while now, you know this, I think it makes more visual sense to kind of break it out like this. It helps you debug things later on if something is not working. And really, I mean, this extra line, unless if you're using a computer that couldn't handle a couple of extra lines, then it wouldn't be running this program or EOS anyway. So I think it's negligible to have these extra lines in your script, and it just helps you from a debugging standpoint and from a planning standpoint just to know what is happening. Great. So now, of course, the last thing I need to do is to go back over to my Focus Assistant, and instead of these buttons just calling the script, now they're going to pass along a script parameter, and that script parameter is going to be just the channel number. So what that's doing again is it's calling the turn channel on script, and it's passing along the channel number as the script parameter. And then within our script, it's assigning that script parameter number as a channel variable, and then passing that channel variable along into our message here. So kind of a nice linear flow. And if I had a whiteboard in front of me, I could draw that out to make it make a little bit more sense. And if it doesn't, please do speak up. I know I'm saying a lot of things at once, and it can be kind of confusing. So I want to make sure that it's what I'm saying is clear. So let's try this again. I'm going to turn the light on. Look at that, it worked. On, off, or excuse me, on, sneak. Wonderful, just like that. Okay, so now what I can do is I can take these two buttons and I can copy those buttons, and I can go over to my work notes display here, and I can paste those two buttons onto this layout. Maybe I'll make them just a little smaller. And instead of having to create two new scripts, all I now need to do is retarget this to be, what is the name of that? It's work notes target ID. Work notes target ID. Same thing here, sneak. Script parameter is going to be work notes target ID. And now let's close our script viewer. Let's clear our command line here. Turn this light on. There we go. It's pulled this in. If I go up to this record, there's channel 3. Channel 3 sneak. Channel 4 sneak. Change our flexi here a little bit. There we go. Now we can see them all. So you can see that I can quickly click through and do all of this various stuff. And then of course, just like I showed you before, you could create a button that is, sneak all to kind of return you back to a default state if you wanted to. You could create, you could have any kind of EOS syntax pretty much works for those buttons, and it works really well, as you can see. And again, this is all just using these two scripts that we've created. So really, we could go and we could delete this earlier send message script because we're not using that now that we've got these set up. And maybe instead of create socket, we should call this like initialize or connect to EOS or something like that, because we're doing more than just creating a socket in it. And of course, you could also, if you wanted to, we have that startup script. You could make those variables and everything. You could have that socket creation. You could put that here in your startup script. You could have this execute this script. So assuming you've already got that information filled out in your EOS setup, anytime you open the file up again, it could automatically create those connections and do all that stuff for you. Totally up to you how you want to make that happen. And then of course there's other things too, like here in this sneak script, I specified sneak 1. If you wanted to, you could have that information over on your EOS setup, and you could make a field that is sneak time. and set that up and pass it along as a global variable again, and then be able to customize that and all be independent of whatever you have set up in your console. So pretty much like, not PMP, but FileMaker would have its own sneak time. All of those different preferences, anything you can send along here, you could, in theory, specify in advance on your EOS layouts. So really get as granular as you want. So that's pretty much it for turning lights on and off. Of course, you can see very quickly how this could be useful for a focus assistant. You could, even if you wanted to, link those to your next and previous buttons. So, have when you click next, have it turn this light on. Maybe you have another set of buttons that does that. So it's almost like a rem dim next last kind of thing where it sneaks the other thing and turns the other one on. In my solution, and I promise we will get to this one day, I've got a thing now that since I have webcam integration working, and since Canon has their software where you can use your DSLR as a webcam, I've got a thing where, you can sit there and automatically capture focus photos where it'll turn the light on for you, waits a second for the camera to focus, takes the photo, turns the light on, goes on to the next light, and repeats that all the way through your show. All those things are very possible using these two basic scripts that we just created, this turn channel on and channel sneak scripts. So pretty cool stuff. Let's see, anything else? So there is a whole other section of this, of course, that you can do, and that comes to when it comes to cue lists and stuff like that. Of course, we have not done any cue list work in our solutions yet. That is probably going to be happening with Chapter 3. I can't promise that yet, but that is my current plan. So if you are working ahead and you have created your own cue list documentation, what I would encourage you to do is watch, it's only about a 10-minute video that I did last December. It's on my channel on this exact same playlist. In fact, I think it's currently the next video on the playlist. And that talks about the syntax needed to do things like changing cue list labels, changing cue labels, changing cue notes, and stuff like that. It's not quite as easy as just typing a command line. And of course, there is no official documentation from ETC on the things you can do. If you search the forums, you can find it. And I will make that information available. I'll kind of collect the information that I've gathered over the years, and I will create a document to put on my website for that. I'll do that in the next couple days. So if you have any questions about anything we covered today or anything else, please throw them into the chat. Otherwise, probably next week sometime I'll do another session, and it's going to be like a wrap-up of this. So there's been a couple of topics that have been suggested to me based on some of the stuff we've done in Chapter 2. So I'm going to do kind of just another roundup and do everything that we missed. And then we'll move on to Chapter 3 at some point in the next couple weeks. And I think that is going to be focused on cue lists and getting all of that kind of functionality written into your solutions. I still owe you all that form on my website to be able to request topics. I apologize for that. I've actually been very busy this last week or so, which is why this session got postponed. But I will get that online soon, and we'll post about it on Instagram once it is, as well as getting the kind of a documentation on these strings written up as well. So great. Any questions, please throw them in the chat. I'll hang out for another 2 or 3 minutes. Otherwise, you guys have a great day, and I will see you again soon. All right, great. Looks like there's no questions, so I'm going to sign off. If you were in the process of typing something, go ahead and finish it up, and I will hang out in the chat. Or you could just email me, and I will see you all next time. Thank you.